I'm Camila. Standing in the overcast garden outside the courthouse, the dark green foliage starkly contrasting with the saturated maroon of my blazer, I feel the weight of this moment. The air around me is thick with the anticipation of a storm. As I step into the silent courtroom, I see my family huddled together on the front bench, looking like a portrait of grieving virtue. My younger sister, Lily, looks at me and smirks, a tiny, triumphant gesture hidden from the judge's view. She whispers something to my mother, and they both suppress a giggle. They truly believe I have nothing but my word against theirs, that 5 years of distance have eroded my power. The judge takes her seat and announces, before we begin the final arguments regarding the estate's distribution, the defense has requested to present a piece of character evidence they claim is vital to understanding the family dynamics during the period in question. She looks at me, and I give a single sharp nod. The court will now view a file provided by the executive titled Living Room Archive. I see my father's brow furrow in confusion. My mother's hand freezes mid-air, but it's Lily who changes first. The smugness drains from her face, replaced by a sudden, sickly pallor. She looks at the large monitors mounted on the walls, her breath catching in her throat. She remembers the shelf. She remembers the camera. I sit down, my hands resting lightly on the table, my heart-shaped face tilted upward as the screen flickers to life. The date on the timestamp is exactly 5 years, 2 months, and 4 days ago. The scene is our old living room. The sound of a girl gasping for air fills the silent courtroom. The video plays in a haunting high-definition silence, broken only by the sounds on the screen. There's the thud of my body hitting the floor. My fingers claw at the rug. And then there's Lily. The courtroom gasps as her sneering face appears on the monitors, her voice loud and clear. "You're a failure." She spits. The image of her dangling my rescue inhaler, her thumb mocking the trigger, is so visceral that the court reporter stops typing. We watch my parents sit on the sofa, unmoving as I turn blue. We watch them wait. We watch the moment Lily realizes I'm losing consciousness, and she simply adjusts her hair in the mirror. The video runs for the full 3 minutes until Mrs. Thompson, the retired nurse next door, bursts through the door. When the screen finally goes black, the silence in the courtroom is a physical weight, suffocating and absolute. I turn my head slowly to look at the bench. Lily isn't smirking anymore. She's trembling, her hands shaking so violently that her lace handkerchief flutters to the floor. Then the sound starts, a low primal animal noise that grows into a frantic, high-pitched scream. She starts wailing, her face contorting into a mask of pure terror as she realizes the world has just seen who she truly is. My parents are frozen, their faces as white as the neoclassical stone outside. The judge doesn't even look at them as she delivers her verdict. The claim for filial support is dismissed with prejudice. The family is stripped of any standing in the grandfather's estate, and the video is immediately referred to the district attorney's office for a criminal investigation into reckless endangerment. I stand up, smoothing the front of my maroon blazer, my sleek ponytail catching the light. I walk past them without a word, my hazel eyes fixed on the exit. I step out into the garden, the cool air filling my lungs easily, fully, and finally, the girl who had collapsed is gone. The woman who remains is free. Let me take you back to how it all started. I come from a wealthy family. My father, Mr. Anderson, is a successful businessman, always engrossed in his work and his tablet. My mother, Mrs. Anderson, is a socialite who spends her days sipping tea and attending social events. They have always favored Lily, my younger sister, who is 2 years younger than me. Lily has always been the center of attention, with her influencer lifestyle and charming personality. I have asthma, which has been a constant struggle for me. But Lily has always made it seem like I'm faking it for attention. She would tell my parents that I'm a drama queen, draining the family's energy. One day, I had an asthma attack. The air became a luxury I could no longer afford. It started as a whistle in my chest, a thin, panicked thread of oxygen that snapped the moment I reached for my bag. My knees hit the hardwood floor with a thud that should have brought them running. But when I looked up through the haze of my blurred vision, I saw only a terrifying curated indifference. Lily stood 3 feet away, the red plastic casing of my rescue inhaler dangling from her manicured fingers like a toy she was teasing a dog with. She didn't move to help. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she leaned in, her face twisting into a mask of pure, unadulterated malice that I had never seen in front of our parents. "You're a failure," she sneered, her voice a low, melodic poison that vibrated in the silent room. I clawed at the air, my fingernails digging into the rug, my lungs feeling as though they were being filled with wet cement. Behind her, on the velvet sofa, my parents sat like statues in a museum of neglect. My mother didn't put down her tea. My father didn't look up from his tablet. They had believed Lily's lies for years. As the world began to dim at the edges, turning into a vignette of charcoal and shadow, the last thing I saw was Lily smirking, her thumb resting mockingly on the inhaler's trigger, making sure I knew that life was hers to give or take. I felt my heart-shaped face press against the cold floor, the hazel light in my eyes flickering toward a permanent dark. They watched me die for 3 minutes, and in those 3 minutes, I realized I no longer had a family. I had a pack of predators waiting for the week to fall. Survival wasn't a miracle. It was a mistake on their part. They hadn't accounted for Mrs. Thompson, the retired nurse next door who had seen me collapse through the bay window and used her spare key to storm inside. By the time she had the nebulizer mask over my face, my parents were already practicing their shocked expressions, and Lily had tossed the inhaler back into my bag, pretending she had just found it. But I was awake enough to see the panic in her hazel eyes. Not for me, but for herself. 2 days later, while the house was empty, I crawled to the small decorative shelf where my parents kept a hidden nanny cam meant to monitor the dog. I had installed it myself months ago to catch Lily stealing from my room, but I had forgotten it was active that afternoon. With trembling hands, I retrieved the micro SD card. My heart hammered against my ribs as I plugged it into my laptop. There it was, the full unedited record of my agony. I watched Lily mock me. I watched my parents ignore my gasps. I watched the moment they decided my life wasn't worth the effort of standing up. I didn't cry. The tears had burned away in the fire of my realization. I copied the file to 3 different cloud drives and a physical vault. That night, I packed a single suitcase. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out into the cool night air, breathing deeply for the first time in my life, knowing that the girl who walked out of that house was not the same one who had collapsed on the floor. I was no longer the victim. I was the evidence. I moved 3 states away, changed my contact information, and began the long, calculated process of erasing them from my existence while keeping the record of their crimes close to my chest. 5 years is a lifetime when you are fueled by a cold, architectural rage. I didn't just survive, I built a fortress. I became the woman in the maroon blazer, a symbol of structured power and unwavering professional poise. My hair was always in a sleek, tight ponytail. My face a masterpiece of controlled intensity, and my hazel eyes now held a knowing look that unsettled my competitors. I had climbed the ranks of a top-tier forensic accounting firm, earning a reputation for finding the skeletons people thought were buried under miles of digital concrete. I was rich, I was respected, and I was entirely alone by choice until the letter arrived. My grandfather, the only person who had ever truly loved me, had passed away, leaving behind a massive estate worth $50 million and a will that named me the sole executive. The family I had fled were suddenly destitute, having bled through their savings, trying to maintain the illusion of wealth that Lily's influencer lifestyle demanded. They were contesting the will, claiming I was mentally unfit and had abandoned them in their time of need. They were suing for filial support, painting me in the press as the heartless daughter who had struck it rich and left her aging parents to rot. They didn't know I had been waiting for this. They didn't know that the girl they called a failure had spent half a decade preparing for this specific reunion. I hired the most aggressive legal team money could buy, not to defend myself, but to go on the offensive. I didn't want a settlement. I wanted a reckoning. I instructed my lawyers to push for a public hearing to make sure the world saw the loving family they claimed to be. I bought a new maroon power suit, sharpened my jawline with resolve, and prepared to step back into the lion's den. The deposition was a theater of lies. I sat across from them in a sterile glass-welded conference room, my back as straight as a blade, my hands clasped elegantly on the mahogany table. Lily sat between our parents, wearing a cheap theatrical black dress, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. She looked older, her face lined with the stress of a failing social media career and the bitterness of a life she couldn't afford. We only wanted what was best for her, my mother sobbed into the microphone, her voice a practiced quaver. She was always so fragile, so prone to hallucinations. My father nodded, his face a mask of weary disappointment. She left us after a particularly bad episode. We searched for her, but she didn't want to be found. Now she wants to take everything our father worked for. I watched them through my hazel eyes. My expression a calm professional blankness. When it was Lily's turn, she looked me directly in the eye, a flash of the old malice sparking behind her fake tears. She used to fake her asthma attacks to get our attention, she told the lawyers, her voice dripping with artificial pity. That day she left. She had a minor fit and we were trying to help her, but she just snapped. I didn't interrupt. I didn't argue. I simply adjusted the cuff of my maroon blazer and smiled. A tiny knowing tilt of the lips that made Lily's eyes widen in momentary confusion. My lawyers filed a motion for a special evidentiary hearing before the final verdict. They argued that the family's caregiving history was relevant to the grandfather's intent for the estate. The judge, a stern woman with a no-nonsense reputation, granted the request. The stage was set. The family thought they were walking into a bank to collect a check. They didn't realize they were walking into a trap I had been baiting for years. And now, here we are, in the courtroom, where the truth is finally about to be revealed.